together now, all together now. Looking for a future, not hindered by the past, not hindered by the pain, not hindered by my name. Come together now, all together now.
Fighting for my future, looking for a change. The story stays the same. It's time to turn the page.
How can you look my future in the eyes and turn away? When will it happen? When will we see? We keep on running, chasing a brighter day. My future will never be the same until we change. Fall together now, all together now. Looking for a future, not hindered by the past, not hindered by the pain, not hindered by my name.
Yeah, come together now, all together now. Trying to grab my ticket to success, hands handcuffed. Tried to sit us down, but ain't expect for us to stand up. School taking hostages, we can't pay the ransom. Know who we are, just a spot on the canvas. Answer us, not just an anthem. Just look inside our eyes and tell us, do we really have a voice if no one ever listens? And even see we hurting cause they blinded by the system. Needed their attention, busy looking at statistics. How they making our decisions, yet ain't count for our existence. Only think of doing things at any cost. Guess they never stop till they bring it all downtown to the ground. Watch the city fall. Town down now, tell us all about who really loves. People saying that education is so essential, but up in these conditions, how far can it really get you? I follow the fundamentals. I got my paper and pencil, but it's only one desk. 7 people initials, not a chance I had. If I looking out the window, we're swallowing all potential when silencing my credentials to withstand all that. Focus on schools immensely. Challenge a set of issues. We gotta reroute the missile.
When we gonna change? 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 Everyone to sing with us, please. When we gonna change? 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 When we gonna change?
It is my great pleasure to welcome everybody again tonight to the DePaul College of Education Spring Forum High School Students Speak Out. And I want to introduce you to our great panel. 2 of our speakers are going to be talking about equity in Chicago public schools, addressing school closings in neighborhoods of color, and also lack of investment and budget cuts in neighborhood high schools. And when I call your name, you can just wave. The first person is Miracle Boyd, who is a sophomore at John Hope College Prep, who joined the fight with 3 other Englewood high schools to keep their schools from closing, and she has been one of the main spokespeople for this really important effort. Nicole Hernandez is a sophomore at George Washington High School who is a member of her school's Student Voice Committee and also participated in a Student Voice and Activism Fellowship last summer with the CPS Office of Student Civic Engagement, where she focused on dealing with lack of investment in neighborhood schools around their facilities. Kayleen Herrera is a senior at Carl Schurz High School. She is a member of Estudiantes Sin Fronteras and a leader with the Logan Square Neighborhood Association. She is going to be talking about the impact of repressive immigration policies on students and their families, issues faced by undocumented students, but really most important, what students at Schurz have been doing about it. And the video that some of you saw at the beginning, which was a kind of recreation, am I right, of what to do if ICE comes to your door, was done by this group, and I'm sure she's going to talk about it. Fabiana Hernandez is a senior at Hancock High School, is going to talk about working with students around electoral activity, very important this year, registering to vote, their parade to the polls with Chicago Votes, campaigning in the recent primary election, and also being an election judge in her neighborhood polling place. And full disclosure, that's where I met her during the primary. A few of the other students are not only going to be talking about organizing at their schools, but particularly around student response to gun violence, talking about their high school walkouts, March for Our Lives, and so forth. Jamie Curtis is a senior. All these seniors, they're about to graduate, right, at Robert Lindblom Math and Science Academy on the South Side. They is going to talk about student activism at Lindblom, focusing mainly on the issue of gun violence and how students have organized around this and other issues at the high school. And that wonderful music video that you just saw is from students at Lindblom. Jeremy Lisker is a senior at Whitney Young Magnet High School and an advocate for giving student voices a stronger role in politics. This past year, he organized and moderated the very first ever high school student-run gubernatorial forum or debate. He co-founded an organization called the Young Urban Progressives, and he was one of the lead organizers in Chicago March for Our Lives. And the last person, and I might just introduce her again, she's the one stuck in traffic, and you actually saw her in the video where Parkland students came to the south side of Chicago, and I'll tell you a little bit about her now. Her name is Rihanna Holman. She's a student at Gwendolyn Brooks Preparatory High School. She's the co-president of BRAVE, which stands for Bold Resistance Against Violence Everywhere, which is affiliated with St. Sabina's Church. She had the opportunity to meet with some of the students from Parkland, Florida, when they came to Chicago to share experiences, and she also participated in the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C., and so she's going to share those experiences with us. So finally, our moderator, Heather Van Bentesen over there, is going to moderate our discussion, and after the panel finishes speaking, she is going to talk about how we as educators can support student civic engagement and activism. So Heather is a national board certified English teacher and has served as an educator and youth advocate in Chicago for almost 20 years. Since leaving the classroom, she has presented at national conferences and works with a variety of civic education initiatives, teachers in school districts, both locally here in Chicago and actually around the country, on the power of civic learning experiences for all students. Her experience as an instructional coach, a curriculum writer, administrator, and civic learning consultant now informs her work as the Chicago Public Schools Civic Engagement Manager. So let's give a big DePaul welcome. to all of our panelists. Let's shut it out. And here are all the kids from University of Guys.
So we're going to do, to start off, is give each of these young activists about 7 to 8 minutes to tell their story. They may or may not use the whole 7 or 8 minutes, and that's cool. And after each of them finish, then we have some questions we're going to ask them to elaborate on before you break out into your discussions, and then we'll come back at the end for some Q&A from you all, okay? Sound good? All right, and we're just going to go down the line. Right, Jamie? All right, so Jamie Curtis from Lindblom. I've known Jamie now for 3 years, and she's an incredible person, and I'm excited for you all to learn from her today. So I'm going to pass this to you.
You want it back? You could have it back. Good evening, y'all. If you can't tell, I'm like super nervous, and I also use y'all a lot, even though I'm not from Texas, so that's a fun thing. So, good evening. My name is Jamie Curtis. Yep. I'm currently a senior attending Lindblom Math and Science Academy. I've gone there for all 4 years of my high school experience. Boo. And before I start to talk about gun violence today, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I prepared this speech for y'all. So, honestly, it was very hard for me to write this because, to me, talking about gun violence is talking about so many other things. It's talking about the disinvestment in our communities of color. It's talking about the erasure of our history and our own culture. And honestly, the disenfranchisement of like communities of color within this city. So a little bit about myself. I grew up on the south side of Chicago in Roseland, mainly in the community of Fernwood. So I've lived there for 18 years, all of my life, and I can honestly say over these last 18 years, I've seen a huge shift in the community. Before, I knew everyone's name on the block, and I could go and talk to my neighbor in her driveway for like hours on end, and I felt like whenever I went outside, I knew I was safe because I knew that was my community. And as the years passed, I saw this change that made this place that I once called home no longer safe for me. And what I mean by that is the park where it's like 2 blocks down from my house where I always used to play growing up because I couldn't really go far, became the grounds for a lot of shooting and a lot of death. So I couldn't go there anymore. And I used to walk my dog there all the time, and I can't walk my dog there anymore because everyone always shoots there. And at first it's like, oh, people just tell you that it's fine, it's not really that dangerous. Until in 7th grade, one of my best friends was shot in the leg at that park. So I felt like I never really knew how dangerous my community was until you actually see it happen yourself. And I feel like it was then that I realized that you don't have to be in a gang, or you don't have to be selling drugs or at the wrong place, like doing the wrong thing or asking for it for something bad to happen. Things can just happen, and we have no control over that. So fast forward a few years later, and that was my first experience with gun violence in my life. It was 6th grade. It was 6th grade. Fast forward a little bit. Now it's 8th grade, getting ready to graduate, go to high school. My oldest brother, his name's Tyran. He was about 23. He was 23, and he had just gotten released from prison. It was like a great experience to see my brother again after 7 years. And only a few days after being released from prison, he was shot and killed, and he bled to death in the alley in Peoria. So there's another experience of that, and basically it was a drive-by shooting. He was shot in the head, and the people who he was in the car with like pushed him out in the alley, and he bled to death. It took 3 hours for him to bleed out. So yeah, and it was just like all of this time it's going through my mind, like, why does this exist in our community? Why is it so easy for people to access guns? And honestly, where's the heart in people? How can you sit there and see a young 13-year-old girl be shot in the leg and run away? How can you sit there and see a young man bleed out before you and push him in the alley? And I honestly felt like, looking back, I didn't understand then why this exists, but I understand now. I feel as though our society as a whole invests these ideals into us and automatically stereotype us into categories and set these limits to what we can do and what we can be based on identities that we hold. And once you go through the world, you automatically have a target assigned to you as this is your category, this is your stereotype, and this is what you're gonna be. And it's very, very hard to break those stereotypes. Being a person of color and coming from low-income communities and coming from a low-income household, it feels as though that is the path that you must stay on. And I thought that would have been my path too. But then I went to Lindblom. And honestly, the one thing I would like to tell y'all about Lindblom students, if you don't take anything else away from me today, is that we are the most empowered, the most independent, and we don't take mess from anybody. If we feel as though students or teachers or administration aren't on our side, kick rocks. We don't care. We'll do it ourselves. When I first started off my sophomore year at Lindblom, my freshman year at Lindblom, very timid person. I didn't really like to talk that much. Thank you. And I wasn't very active. And that all changed my sophomore year when I founded my school's first GSA, and that stands for Gender and Sexuality Alliance. From there, I became more aware of the issues that exist within our own student dynamic, the underrepresentation of our Latinx community, the separation of the Black community, the segregation that students felt like existed when in our school, and that led to unnecessary violence. So as Lindblom students, what we do is when we try and address issues such as gun violence or disinvestment in schools, we look at this from a community standard. We try to unite everyone on the same basis because numbers matter and ideals matter, but once you find a community of people, no matter how different they are, and if you unite them on one accord, that movement is so powerful, and that's how you make change. So when Lindblom was organizing for the March 14th walkout, for the March for Our Lives, we united our GSAs, our Student Voice Committee, our Black Girl Magic, and we all marched out. And we were all marching for our lives in relation to the Black lives that are lost, the trans lives that are lost. And in response to that, even later on, for the Day of Silence, which fell on April 27th, it was just recently, we all took a vow of silence, not only to represent those lives that were lost in Parkside, but to also represent the struggle that we're continuously fighting for today. And I probably only have 15 seconds left. But I'm sorry, I talk a lot. And I want to close with this one thing. Being a student, being a youth in a predominantly adult space, it is very hard to feel discouraged, and it is very easy to feel discouraged, and it is very easy to feel like your voice doesn't matter. And for all of you all who are aspiring to be teachers, the one thing that I will encourage you to do early on is inspire your students and tell them that their voice does matter, and let them know that you want to hear it. Because as a youth, I have gone so long being told that my voice doesn't matter and that it doesn't have power. So if you can instill the passion in your students early on for advocacy, and if you can tell them that their voice does matter and show them that the power that it has, then these little acts that we're doing now have so much power later on. And what feels like a big step, or what felt like a big step for me starting out as an activist, will feel smaller for them because they'll have a support network and they'll have a foundation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miracle Boy. I'm kind of young compared to everyone sitting up here, seniors. Make me feel intimidated. I'm a sophomore at John Hope College Preparatory High School on the south side of Chicago. And I started John Hope of 2017, November 5th. Yeah, November 5th. I was out of school a whole month before I transferred there because I went to Johnson College Prep, which is a noble school on the south side of Chicago, down the street from Team Inglewood, which is a school that was set to close by CPS. I transferred there. Well, I did have good grades. I had really good grades. I was in honors and AP courses my freshman year, second semester. In my first month, my sophomore year, I was taking honors chemistry, AP World Lit, AP World History. And now that I've been to Hope, which is a school that CPS now is setting to phase out, we don't have those investments anymore. Like, only thing we have in our school is such as BAM, basketball and volleyball. That's like a common sport for everyone. And so like our school is being disinvested in because CPS wants to close John Hope, Team Inglewood, Harper High School, and Robeson High School. And make a new school, which none of us will be able to attend, and they're going to make it a select enrollment school, which means 7th graders and 8th graders will have to test in. And so when we first found out that our school was going to be closed the end of this school year, we stood up and we took a fight back. We fought back CPS. We fought against our mayor, City of Chicago. We teamed up with Team Inglewood students, Harper students, and Robeson students, and we decided that we were going to make a change. We're going to attack the mayor. We're going to attack CPS. We're going to attack the network, and whoever else gets in that way, they're just going to be in so much trouble. So we started protesting. It started with the students. We went to COCO, which is a Southside organization. They help like schools and students from anything that they need help with. And so we started organizing with them. And with them, I took my first plane ride to Washington, D.C., and we took our matter to the American Teachers of Federation. I also attended the March for Our Lives in Washington, D.C. I did so much things on this fight to keep our school open. And so now we're being phased out. And they're trying to like put transcripts in so students could transfer the next school year. And I'm like, whether you kill us slow or you kill us fast, you still kill us. Like, we're not done. And so like basically like our schools are being disinvested in. Students come to school every day and they don't get what they need at home, and so they're looking to come to school and hoping that they will find it, but you don't when you have a mayor who doesn't give a crap about you, CPS who doesn't give a crap about you. And so like our classrooms, half of our population is special needs, and so the rest are just it's only 11 sophomores, 12 if I'm not mistaken, and it's only 15 seniors, and you can just amount to guess what the rest are because there's only 102 of us. And so like, I mean, it's so much that I could get into when I come and speak about education, because Black schools, low-income neighborhoods, schools are not invested in. Children are not invested in. Adults who work at the school are not invested in. Teachers don't get paid enough. You expect a teacher to teach your child and grow up and be successful, and they don't get paid enough. Like, it's so much that I could get into. Like I said, once again, I don't know why I keep repeating that, but it's like, it's like so much. And like students at our school, when they found out the school was going to be closed, everybody was sad and saying they want to transfer. But our teacher, Mr. Jackson, told us, no, stand up and fight back. You all in high school now. We told y'all things was going to happen. It's going to be a whole new world when you get out there. And so we started to protest about keeping our school closed. And we were there in the rain outside of Mayor Rahm Emanuel's house, you know, raising hell. So like we didn't get his mind to change, but we got CPS mind to change, and they said like they're going to phase us out and close our school in 3 years, keep our school open for 3 years, but they're not investing in us within those 3 years. I'm like, you want to keep us school open? That's not good enough. Yeah, okay, you tried, come again. And so they trying to keep our school open for 3 years, and I'm like, okay, you're keeping us open, but like, are we going to be investing in within those 3 years? You got enough money to keep the school open for 3 years, then you got money to invest in us. Like, that's common sense. Ain't nobody slow. It's not rocket science. I mean, like students don't get the help that they need. When I was going to Johnson College Prep, I was taking those honors and AP courses, but now since our school is not invested in, I can't take those. And I told my mom, I said, well, what if I stay here and I struggle in college? And she was like, well, you're not going to struggle because you're going to succeed anywhere you go in life. But when CPS is not giving us those needs and benefits we want as teachers and students, you have no choice. You got to go with the flow or hit the dough. Like, so like education, it really matters to me. Like I always say, whatever I go through outside of home, outside of school, I never let that get into my school life. I always been a straight A student, never had an F or D in my life. My last C was a second grade in science. I hate science, Jesus. And so, like education really matters, and if it takes our mayor to basically come and sit with us. He's the city of Chicago mayor, and he doesn't sit with the black and brown students, Latino students, GSA students, LGBTQ students. He don't sit with them and try to understand what they need, what their family needs, what they need as students, what the school needs, what the teachers need. You can't expect the teacher to teach them. You can't expect the student to learn. It's all types of students that are out here ready to learn, and we can't get those investments because our mayor don't want to give it to us. CPS is being the puppet for our mayor, and it's so crazy. I mean, like, I wasn't even prepared for this. It's so crazy. And, like, to see that my school would close, we found out that they made their final decision. And I spoke in front of Chip Johnson. He used to work at my school. He was a teacher at my school. And he just sat there and he laughed. And so the network came to our school to give us our transcript papers and see what school we got accepted to. I told them, that's not good enough for me. And so I said I was going to stay at the school that we're at. And so basically they're just trying to push us out. Like us students, we organize with our school. We organize with other schools. We met up, we linked. Weekdays, weekends, we skipped school to go protest for like what we believe in. And so I would just want to wrap this up. Education matters to me, and it matters to a lot of people who might not think education matters, but education matters to me. And our mayor and our CPS school boards, they should believe education matters, and they can't say education is equal because it's really not. And so, think education matters, but education matters to me and our mayor and our CPS
Okay,
school
so
boards,
next we have
they should believe education matters, and they can't say education is equal because it's really not.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nicole Hernandez, as I've been introduced. I'm from George Washington High School, a neighborhood high school located in the southeast side of Chicago. Wait, is this? Can we hear this? Okay. In the east side neighborhood. It's a predominantly Hispanic high school. And what I really like about Washington is the variety of academic programs that we offer, which include advanced placement, MYP, IB, the IB diploma program, and honors, of course. And we're also recognized as one of the democracy schools within Illinois, which has a lot to do with the work that we do at SVC. And I decided that apart from taking advanced placement courses and MYP, IB courses, which is like hard, I had to become like an advocate for my school because I noticed that going into high school, it was different from my elementary school because I don't really notice like many disparities between elementary schools, but in high school things changed because I noticed that there were multiple problems with the infrastructure in my school, and then I noticed that these problems didn't exist in every school. Like we have leaky roofs. Just today, I was walking to SVC and there was a leak, and it had actually like flooded into like the ground, and like students were stepping over it and like water, and it was just it's not good. And am I allowed to know? I don't know. But yeah, we have a lot of problems with our building, and at SVC it's student voice committee, so I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but basically there we get to voice our concerns. And through SVC, I actually got connected to a fellowship called the Student Voice and Activism Fellowship, which basically taught us a lot about oppression and the different types of oppression. And I got to learn that what was going on in my neighborhood high school, which was predominantly Hispanic, does have a lot to do with systematic oppression. Because like I said, this wouldn't be happening in a selective enrollment school that you had to test into, which isn't fair because although we didn't test into our schools, we still matter. Like we still work there and we're still bright students, although maybe CPS doesn't see us as that because we're not selective enrollment, but we still care about our grades, we care about college, and that's why I decided to advocate for this. And as Student Voice Committee, we have hosted walkthroughs with CPS officials to expose them to our work environment and the conditions, which include, a classroom had no door before the walkthrough, but when we told the principal we were doing the walkthrough, the engineers put in a door because they wanted us to be like good. And then, throughout the walkthroughs, there were multiple problems that the people noticed, and the engineers, they walked through with us and they looked nervous because they were like, oh, everything's fine, but clearly they could see that everything was not fine. And through those walkthroughs, we actually got connected to more people who are going to be investigating our school. Tomorrow we have another walkthrough for our school. And with that, we have gotten certain repairs, and that's not enough because our school is still, basically broken. And we also do media exposure with Twitter. We post a lot of pictures about our school, and with the Student Voice and Activism Fellowship, we also got to visit my school, and we took pictures of all the infrastructural issues, and we have a Tumblr up which shows all of them, and if you guys saw the pictures, oh my gosh, it would just, it's all bad. But yeah, well, basically through this work with the Student Voice Committee and the Student Voice and Activism Fellowship, I've learned that not everything is fair and not everything is equal. But there is things that we can do about it as youth, because as youth we think that we don't have power because we don't hold these high jobs. We don't hold these high jobs where we can say yes or no to certain things, but with our voices we do have certain power to influence those who hold the power. And as SVC, I just hope that we can continue to do this work and continue to voice our opinions and further get better equity in our school in regards to the infrastructure. And yeah.
Get to see you. So would you mind we came over on this way, on this side?
Oh, yeah.
Is that cool? And then will you go shimmy down there? I love you, thank you. All right. Come on down. Okay, so we have the next one we have is Kayleen Herrera. And so Jamie, you guys will switch. Oh, she just needs to stand where she is. You can just stand where you are. For now, you can stand where you are right now. And then, so, yeah. You can take it. All right.
Hi, my name is Kayleen Herrera, and I'm currently a senior at Carl Schurz High School, located in the northwest side of Chicago. I am part of many extracurricular activities at Schurz, such as dance, poetry, community service, and being a member of the National Honor Society. I appreciate being part of all these opportunities at Schurz, especially being a member of the Estudiantes Sin Fronteras, better known as, or other known as, Students Without Borders. I got involved in activism around immigration issues during my sophomore year. The club sponsor, Mr. Islas, invited me to a meeting with Jennifer Velasquez from the Logan Square Neighborhood Association, or better known as LSNA, a community organization. When I met with Jennifer, she was recruiting students for Estudiantes Sin Fronteras, a club that worked on immigration issues. Part of what drew students to come was the urge to create a safe space at SHRS for parents, students, and the community. Our club received training on Know Your Rights, and then we talked about the best way to get this information across to everyone in our community. We were inspired to make a video by another Know Your Rights video created by Chitla organization. Chitla's video was very emotional and sad, so we decided to make our own Know Your Rights video more informal so that the community can feel more comfortable to ask questions about their rights instead of being scared or too sad to ask at all. After many written skits, we got to film our video inside and outside of the SHRS community. We were also able to present this video at many bilingual parent meetings, a local school council meeting at Gray Elementary, to all the SHRS teachers, and to many of our students. Many people were surprised by our Know Your Rights video because a lot of the information was new to them. We also did many Know Your Rights workshops with students and parents, which is where one of our members' parents was influenced by our video and encouraged her daughter to join. We realized how important this club is to our school when a student's father at SHRS was detained. The mother called SHRS and spoke to a counselor that referred her to our club sponsor, Mr. Islas. Our club was able to help the fundraiser that a family member had made through LSNA's platform and raised enough money within 48 hours. The father was later released and is now home. We are now working on a new project called the Welcoming Business Project, where we talk to business owners about resources and gave them information on how they can also educate their employees and customers. We are hoping to create a network of businesses that would be willing to act and support us if someone is detained in our community. Our work was recognized and featured on the front page of the Chicago Tribune. And after being in the club for 3 years and putting major time and effort into informing the community, it felt amazing to finally be recognized for our club's hard work. There are many important lessons I learned from being involved with Estudiantes Sin Fronteras. One of them is to understand that any help is good help. Now that I am soon to graduate, I'm proud to say that Estudiantes Sin Fronteras never let any setbacks stop us from helping those in need of it. I still want to participate in immigration activism after high school because of the hope it gives people in our communities. No matter the situation and no matter how hard it is, there's always a helping hand willing to guide you, and that's what our club is all about.
All right, so we have Fabiana Hernandez from Hancock, and you can just stand where you are.
Hi, good evening. John Hancock College Prep is a selective enrollment high school located on the southwest side of Chicago. With only about 950 students, Hancock has a student body of about 98% Latino students. Hancock used to be a community-based school up until 2015 when it began its transition into a selective enrollment school. It is considered one of the democracy schools here in Illinois, and I'm currently a senior at Hancock High School. My name is Fabiana Hernandez, and I've been attending Hancock since I was a sophomore. And these last couple of years that I've been at Hancock, they have offered me many opportunities to be able to give back to my community. And tonight I'm here to talk about just a couple. I want to begin with the Parade to the Polls. The Parade to the Polls was a great opportunity for students to be able to network with the community and elected officials, such as Chuy Garcia and Aaron Ortiz, we had Troy Garcia come to our school and talk about issues that we are able to, engage, I guess, with the community. How we started off with the parade to the polls was the civic classes in our school was encouraging students to register to vote online and to attend the parade to the polls. Over 90 students ended up attending the parade to the polls, which it wasn't a lot, but it was the school day during, a lot of tests going on. And not everybody was able to vote since, due either to their age or their citizenship status. But they still went to show their support, and they still went because I think the parade to the polls was open to anybody in the school. We think a couple of weeks before that, we ended up doing a town hall, so we could sign up voters into a Google Classroom and be able to communicate with them, and distribute permission slips, review logistics and things like that. The civics classes compiled a guide on most of the candidates, and the Chicago Votes was the one who made the guide for the judges. What we did on the day of was we were all sitting in the auditorium, and we were going through what we were going to do. We were making posters. We were asking questions. I think we're also reviewing logistics again. And these efforts were conducted in partnership with the MICVA Challenge, the Chicago Votes, and the CPS Participate curriculum, which was, overall, it was a great opportunity for students to engage and to give back to the community. The MICVA Challenge partnered up with Hancock and many other schools, and the MICVA Challenge actually encouraged me to sign up to be an election judge. And to be an election judge is a lot of responsibility. You're the responsible party, for the proper and orderly voting at the polling place. And on March 20th of 2018, I was able to go. It was really tiring. It was from 5 a.m. to I didn't get home till 9 p.m. But it was a great experience because not only did I meet new people that have encouraged me and motivated me to become a better me and to become more actively engaged in my community, but I also met Diane Horowitz, which she offered me this amazing opportunity, this unbelievable moment. Another thing I want to talk about tonight is the walkout for gun control. On June 1st of 2016, what seemed to be such a beautiful, amazing day. It was good weather. We were about to leave, turned into a life-changing tragedy when a student, one of our friends, was shot, killed, and left on the sidewalk a block away from our school as we were all entering the building. This impacted the Hancock community to seek justice, but justice was not an option, at least not for us. The people responsible for his death were never caught. And after that, many students in our school, especially my grade, because we were the last grade to be, I guess, the community-based part of the school, because it's still in its last year of transition. And we, I believe that gun violence, is an issue that just doesn't affect Victor, or it doesn't affect his family or just Hancock community. It is an issue that transcends from the city of Chicago to the entire nation. And I am especially proud and inspired by all of the youth and of the communities who have gotten together, who have come together and who have felt strong enough and empowered enough to come together and speak out about these gun violence these things have been affecting the South Side, and it's not just the South Side. It's, like I said, it's an issue that transcends through the entire nation. On March 14 of 2018, hundreds of students marched outside of Hancock and the school premises. This walkout was organized not by the student committee, but it was organized by civically engaged students who wanted to take a lead on this issue, and they held their own meetings and collaborated with the student council, the student government, and the school administration. The walkout started at around 10 a.m. and ended at around 10:25 a.m. The walkout was mainly for the victims of the Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and while this was part of the national event, it was perhaps more powerful for us given our local story. We were even in the front cover of the Chicago Sun-Times. And as a student, as someone who has experienced this, someone who has lost not just one friend, but many due to gun violence, and many friends, many family members, I just want to say, it's enough. This is our turn. It is my turn to stand up and talk about what I really think should be done, especially in school. It should not have happened in a place where I go for a better future. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Liskar. I'm a senior at Whitney M. Young Magnet High School. Thanks for having me. As mentioned, the issue of the role of young people, the role that young people play in the public sphere is very important to me. The simple fact is that we're not taken seriously. For a variety of reasons, our representatives choose not to represent us. And because of that, I decided to devote much of my high school career to changing our role. Thanks for having me. I remember always thinking when I was younger, I wish I was older. A lot of kids think that. They want to be grown up. But why would they want that? What does that really mean? The truth is, they mean they want to be taken seriously. Little is worse than being looked down upon, being seen as not capable of providing valuable insight. Whether it was in school or at the dinner table at home, all young people experience intellectual discrimination. Even if 12-year-olds don't grasp the nuances of public policy, they experience it every day. They see firsthand the shortcomings of our public school system and the lack of investment in certain neighborhoods. They often interact with a far more diverse group of people than the adults that surround them. All this is to say, why not us? Where's our seat at the table? Unfortunately, the answer to those questions are all too obvious. Money and voting. To be taken seriously, we need money, and we need to start voting. Money is hard to come by when you're about to take on the task of paying for college, so I decided to start with voting. In the past, people have tried voter registration drives, marches to the polls, all of which are important, and all of which I would later organize myself. But I felt like we were missing a step. In order to affect the kind of systemic change I was looking for, you need to not only give people the tools to vote, but a reason to. If young people won't vote because they aren't taken seriously, and in order to be taken seriously, they need to vote, we've got quite the paradox. I ultimately decided that in order to work toward the long-term solution of getting young people to vote, and therefore forcing those in power to take us seriously, I needed to find a way that would get those in power to demonstrate a willingness to listen. Something that, A, would show young people they can be taken seriously, and B, would show those in power that young people are worth listening to. As I thought about this paradox as I came home from school, I realized I could take advantage of the highly competitive and highly public race for the Democratic nomination for governor of Illinois. My idea was to stage a debate run completely by high school students that could demonstrate both politicians' willingness to listen, and if done correctly, could show politicians that we are worth listening to. The obstacle, of course, would be getting the candidates to show up on our terms. I vividly remember my first attempt to get a candidate to commit to coming. We were months away from the proposed event, but I wanted to guarantee a candidate's attendance early in the process. A fellow organizer and I decided to attend a meet and greet with Alderman Amaya Pawar at a dance studio in Evanston and made sure to dress formally to ensure that we were taken seriously. To our surprise, when we walked in, we were asked to take our shoes off. Despite our miscalculation of the dress code, we were able to talk to Alderman Pawar at the end of the event, and he seemed willing to attend. Leveraging our commitments as we received them, we were able to get every candidate to commit to attending without many blips. Although I will say I was blown off by a candidate I ran into at a downtown Hamburger. Anyway, all was going as planned until the week leading up to the debate. Then all of a sudden, we faced a candidate attempting to back out, a campaign making threats of backing out unless we conformed to their demands, and an angry school administration threatening to cancel the event altogether unless we put out the fires immediately. It was clear that we were being undermined because of our age. The campaign making threats to back out literally refused to negotiate with us directly, demanding to speak to an adult. One of the more courteous campaigns told us to send their thanks to the teachers helping us coordinate, assuming that we did not do this on our own. Many of the media outlets we contacted did not seem convinced of our ability to stage a successful event. It was a frustrating, stressful experience, but we held our ground. We put out the fires, convincing candidates and media alike that it was worth their time. We had the debate, the candidates showed, and the students impressed with intelligent, articulate, and well-considered questions. I felt like we were for once taken seriously. But now what? I got my answer as I watched the Parkland students look into Marco Rubio's eyes and demand change at the CNN town hall. For me, for Chicago, this did not feel like a new issue. The violence here is an everyday concern for Chicagoans. But the Parkland students did something we've never been able to do, get and hold the attention of the media. I saw it as not only an opportunity for young people to be heard at all levels of government, but an opportunity to give the affected people of Chicago a platform to share their stories and demand change. At the beginning, we felt a little unorganized. Our first group meeting was dominated by adults. They were organizers that had been working on similar issues in Chicago for years, and their experience and advice was appreciated, but it didn't feel right. What made this movement unique and what gave it the ability to outlast that typical press cycle was the fact that it was run by students. Not even college students, high school students, many of whom were not even old enough to vote. After that first meeting, we respectfully asked the adults to step back. We felt ready to lead the movement on our own and make it Chicago-centric, focused on lifting up the voices of those affected every day in under-resourced and largely ignored communities. We also separated ourselves from the national movement in that we chose to focus on what we believe fundamentally causes gun violence here. It isn't about calling out the NRA or background checks or even assault weapons bans. We expect those things from our elected officials. It is about attacking the root of the issues. It is about the under-resourced minority communities that need funding for schools and affordable housing. Equitable opportunity is the name of the game. Raising the standard of living in our most vulnerable communities is the only way to do so. I'm extremely proud of the job we did with messaging and lifting up voices at the march. However, the media narrative largely ignored the calls for equitable opportunity and focused on communities of color. We felt like we were swallowed into a larger narrative of shock at the fact that we are a youth-led movement. Of course, this is an important part of our story and essential to giving leverage to young people, but the fact that our message was ignored is a lot more telling. The change we want to see hasn't yet occurred, and our movement didn't end with the march. Which brings me to the present. We aren't done. We're in the process of registering March for Life Chicago as a 501c4. We plan on becoming a fully operating organization committed to systemic change in our city, as well as at the state and national levels. We will continue to be completely run by students because our message is twofold. Students are capable of creating real change. Young people refuse to continue to be left out of the conversation at home, at school, and in the policymaking process. We are past the point of yearning to be taken seriously. We will be taken seriously. Thank you. Young people refuse to continue to be left out of the conversation at home, at school, and the policymaking process. We are past the point of yearning to be taken seriously. We will be taken seriously. Thank you.
Hey everyone. My name is Rihanna. I go to Gwendolyn Brooks College Prep.
I'm a part of the Brave Youth Leaders at St. Sabina. BRAVE stands for Bold Resistance Against Violence Everywhere. It's an acronym. BRAVE is a nonviolence prevention youth program, and Lamar Johnson and Pam Bosley, right there in that area, they are the overseer and the something else. The overseer and the overseer, yeah, something else. They work together. They help us. So basically, what they do, they teach us youth how to be leaders, and they tell us that our voices do matter, and they explain to us what's going on, and we have to come up with solutions to fix the problems. So basically, I joined BRAVE last summer. I worked with the Peacemakers program over the summer, with One Summer Chicago, and I've been going to St. Sabina for a long time, but I didn't really know what BRAVE was about, but my brother was a part of BRAVE also, so that's how I kind of got into it. And basically being a part of BRAVE has taught me how to be a better person. I don't think that if I wasn't a part of BRAVE, I definitely wouldn't be here right now, because I was never the type of person that spoke out. I was never the type of person that really looked at politics. I never paid attention to politics. I never watched the news or anything like that. But now I know the problem, and I want to be a part of the solution. So, so over the summer, with the One Summer Chicago program at the St. Sabina, we did a demonstration downtown. And basically, our theme was our story matters. So we were telling the difference how Chicago is a tale of two cities, how the north side of Chicago is more privileged than the south side of Chicago, but in the end, it's all Chicago. And we went to the mayor's office, and we came up with a solution to the problem. And we understood that some adults just don't care about what we think because we're youth, and they don't really see us as matter. They don't see our voices as mattering to any other person. So we had to come up to him, even though he didn't listen to any of our ideas, but I feel like it was a big step for us to even go there and to talk to him about what we were feeling and how it happened and what we wanted to do. March 23rd, 6 o'clock, I was on a bus to go to Washington, D.C. for the March for Our Lives event. When I got there, it was like a sense of, there was so many emotions going around because, listening to so many people's stories and understanding what they went through to be where they are today, it was really empowering. But my favorite story was from Trayvon Bosley, which is Pam Bosley's son. He lost his brother through gun violence, and he was shot in front of a church. And listening to his story and knowing that could happen, that happens every day in Chicago, and that people don't see it as mattering. His death has still not been solved. Just like the young lady said, sorry, I forgot your name. But yeah, I mean, like, listening to everyone's story and really seeing where they're coming from, it was a big step for me because I've never really understood, because I've never lost anyone to gun violence. And, like, just knowing where they're coming from and really understanding where they're at today and knowing that what they've been through has made them grow and be a better person, it really inspired me. So I met with the kids from Parkland also. I met Emma, Sam, and Evelyn. Evelyn's sister died, Carmen, during the Parkland shooting, and Sam's best friend, Joaquin, died too. And Emma, she's a senior, and she goes to Douglas Stone too. So we're all working together to come up with to come up with one solution to the problem of gun violence in Chicago and around the nation. Because we understand that what's happening today is not just happening in Chicago, it's happening all over the world in different platforms in different ways. And the problem is that people are having this easy access to guns, and we want that to stop. We need that to stop because it's young people in Chicago that's buying guns illegally, and the government isn't doing anything about it, and that's where we as youth come in and we do their job. If they don't know what they're doing, that's where we come in. So we've done March for Our Lives, so now we vote for our lives. I'm not old enough to vote yet, but here's where I come in. I get people to register to vote. I get people to go out and vote. I get people to listen to my story and listen to other people's stories so they can know that their vote does matter, that their opinion does matter, that their voice does matter, and that if you don't say anything, you don't do anything, no one's gonna listen. No one's gonna care about where you're coming from, or no one's gonna see you as being important. And I think it's important that they do know that you are important. Okay, so I wanted everyone to hear this last message from me. Chicago's gun violence is becoming normalized, meaning that the way social media depicts Chicago's gun violence, they see us Chicagoers as being a bunch of bad kids, but they don't understand that we're good kids in a mad city. They don't understand that the guns are the problem, not us. So I think that that's where the problem is. I heard a couple of times people wanted me to see how I felt about this. That someone from Parkland said that they have that platform that they have because they're privileged. And do I think that Chicago does not have that same platform? Chicago gets more, Chicago gets more attention for the violence. Chicago's violence is always on the news. But here's the difference. Chicago does not get any support for their violence. Parkland got so much support, they got so much love and condolences from the government. But when you hear about a black person or a brown person being shot in Chicago, they see it as, it was just another gangbanger that got shot gang banging. And I feel like that is where the problem is. That's where the problem needs to stop. Every kid in Chicago is not a gangbanger. Every kid in Chicago is not on the street selling weed or crack or whatever you want to call it. Chicago kids are good kids. Chicago is just not where it needs to be right now, and the government isn't doing anything to help Chicago out. So no, I don't think that Parkland is more, Parkland is more privileged, but their platform is there. They got their platform because the government and the media only sees the good in Parkland. They don't see the good in Chicago. Chicago's violence is normalized, and I think it needs to stop. And I feel like we as youth are the only people that can do it. Thank you. The government and the media only sees the good in Parkland. They don't see the good in Chicago.
Speak into the mic. So we're going to do a round of questions, and some of the questions you guys have been introduced ahead of time. Some of the questions, I'm sorry, I just thought of now after hearing you talk. So we'll see how that goes too. All right? High five. You can do this. Okay. So you have the microphone there. If you're going to answer a question, just nod your head, let us know, grab the mic, and stand up. All right? Okay, so let's start with learning a little bit more about what you've learned through your activism. All right? Specifically, what have you learned about yourself? And what have you learned about people in your community, whether it's your peers or your school community or your greater community? Okay, so let's start with learning a little bit more about what have you learned about yourself doing this work, and what have you learned about other people? Whoever wants to take a stab at that, jump on in. And what have you learned about people in your community, whether it's your peers or your school community? Go for it. Or your greater community?
Okay, so being an activist has taught me that other people have no choice but to listen to me, and that even if I don't know what I'm talking about, I can make other people believe that what I'm talking about is true. I mean, like, that's how it is. I mean, like, listen to other people, you get their thoughts, and you can turn their thoughts into your thoughts. You can turn their opinions into your own opinions. It's twisted in your own little way. And I think that that's an important thing to know, because sometimes you're not gonna always understand anything that's going on. Sometimes, I remember I had a meeting once, and they were talking about bills being passed, and I was just so confused. I don't know anything about bills and laws and stuff like that. And it's crazy because I want to be a lawyer when I grew up. So yeah, I feel like, so I just jumped into the conversation. I was like, yeah, this is what's happening, and I changed the conversation. I made it my own conversation. I feel like that's what I've been taught being an activist, and I think that's what I've learned from other people.
Nice. So the power of persuasion and the power of argumentation, that you have this power in you. Nice. We need advocate lawyers out there for sure. Miracle, you want to go?
Yeah, this is what's happening, and I changed the conversation. I made it my own conversation. I feel like that's what.
You can just take them off, leave them off if you want.
A miracle kid. Being an activist, it came with a lot of opportunity. Like within the city of Chicago, most people think that there's nothing here in Chicago but gun violence and a bunch of people dying. But ever since our school began to like phase out and everything, I've been given so many opportunities like to come here, being able to go to Washington, D.C., meet Parkland students, organize with my school, and I'm only a sophomore, having no help from an adult with our school because they're afraid of being fired or whatever the case may be, threats from the CPS. But like I said, it's come with a lot of opportunity, and for myself, I would say that I'm brave. A lot of people believe in me, and like most of you all probably haven't seen our hashtags, but like you said, Good Kids, Mad City. I have a sweatshirt, a drawstring sweatshirt about it, and things like that. I mean, like, it's really a lot of good things here in Chicago. It's just a good kid, Mad City. It came with a lot of opportunity. I get to meet new kids, meet new people that I've never seen before. And when you get people to stand up for what you believe in and what they believe in, something could really change if people actually put their words into action. About it, I mean, like, it's really a lot of good things here in Chicago. It's just a good kid, Mad City. It came with a lot of opportunity. I get to meet new kids, meet new people that I've never seen before. And when you get people to stand up for what you believe in and what they believe in, something can really change if people actually put their words into action.
One thing I learned being an activist is some people think activism is like a dirty thing. I learned, like, has anybody else ever heard the term, like, social justice warrior and how there's, like, this negative connotation with it? I learned that having a voice and standing up for your voice automatically made you seem like this selfish, arrogant person who, like, couldn't think about any other opinions but your own. And I think I've also, like, in acknowledging that, I've worked to, like, actively change people's opinion about that. I've learned, like, there's a really strong sense of community, and I don't know if I said this, but, like, I founded my school's GSA, and it was through that, it was through the GSA that my activism was born, and also through the GSA that, like, I actually came out as, like, a trans person, and, like, I cut my hair, and I did all this awesome stuff. So activism has, like, taught me that haters are gonna hate, and they're this upset because, you know, they have nothing better to do with their life, and community is the strongest foundation of networking that you can have, because once you have the community behind you, that's when you can actually make real change.
Thank you. So, a few of you have mentioned here and there about the role of adults in your work and in your activism, or at least your development as an activist. I'm going to ask you to talk about the role of adults in your work. It does not necessarily have to be like who's been your champion. It can also be who's challenged you, right? We can all learn a lot with how adults can be advocates or barriers, right, into you and your activism and working on things that you care about. So does anyone have a story that they'd like to tell that we can all learn from? Miracle, I love you. I'm going to ask for anyone else that hasn't gone yet before. All right, go ahead. Advocates or barriers, right?
I think the biggest thing is to adults' role in the work that we do is support us and treat us as equals. Just yesterday, like I started noticing these things all the time. You know, my friend was making up a calculus test, and I was just in the room, you know, because I was waiting for him to be done. And you know, naturally we started talking about politics. Who knows how it got there? But we were talking about, you know, the College Board and how they're making money off of students, and that's terrible. And I don't know. I just noticed like the teacher, like who I'd never even spoken to before. This is an AP calculus class. I'm in honors calculus. I'm a senior. I didn't want to deal with AP calculus. She asked what class I'm in. I said honors, and she had the audacity to ask me, what's your grade? I'm like, I have a B right now. Second semester, I'm cruising. I'm pretty happy with that B. And she goes, oh yeah, that'd be a D in my class. I'm like, excuse me? Like, I don't know. It was rude. Anyway, we were talking about politics. And you could just tell, like, she automatically judged me off this one thing she knew about me. And not knowing anything else I do outside of school or anything, she was, she was questioning every point I made. She would try to counter me in this condescending way. And, it was just not really, I didn't feel like it was relevant to the conversation we were having. So I felt like I was maybe a little too rude also, but that's how she treated me. So I was like, what's your point? Like, what are you saying? There's a double standard, and just for adults who deal with young people all the time in their lives and their jobs, I would say treat us as equals. Don't make assumptions, and support us, but don't try to take over what we're trying to do.
Miracle?
Me again. So the day of the national walkout, me and a freshman at my school, Jakaya Jackson, we organized it, and we got students from our school to walk out in solidarity with the Parkland student kids at 10 a.m., even though the national, wait a minute. No. Yeah, the national time was 10 a.m., and we wanted to walk out at 12:15, I think it was, in honor of Laquan McDonald, which was an African-American guy who was shot and killed by the police. In our school, we're saying, like, no, we can't do it because you should have let us know ahead of time. And so my mom was like, if they don't let you guys walk out, then they're violating your amendments and things like that. I forgot which one it was. Who cares? Anyway. But still, yeah, they were violating our First Amendment. And so, and when I was upstairs in the library with my mentor, because she came and got me one of those days, and it was that time for us to walk out, and she wouldn't let me go back downstairs because it were reporters outside our school, because previously when I found out they weren't going to let us walk out, you know what I did? I called Lauren Fitzgerald, and she's a Chicago Sun-Times. She works at Chicago Sun-Times, and I called her like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, yeah, our principal's not gonna let us walk out, and so when it happened, and our school saw that there were cameras outside, they were like, oh no, you're not going outside, and things like that. I'm like, what? And so when everybody got up to walk out, like our security, they were like barricading the doors and locking the doors, exits. The kids like running around trying to get out, and they was just not letting us out. I'm like, okay, this sucks. You telling our principal told us this is the time to stand up and fight for what you believe in, but you're not letting us go outside because it's cameras? Are you serious? And so like, mainly, I encourage adults to be like supporters of students in what they believe in, because you don't have too many kids these days that are brave enough to speak up about what's going on in the community and in their household, in school, about politics, democracy, or whatever it is. So encourage kids and not tear them down and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or stereotype them because of what they look like, what they act like in school. You can learn a lot from a kid if you just encourage them to do more. Like you said, aspire, inspire. Aspire someone to inspire someone.
Thank you for that. So I'm curious to know, is any of the work you guys have been doing, anything you've been learning about, or any folks that you've been working with, can any of that inform classroom instruction? There's a lot of future teachers here tonight, right? Can anything inform how we think about our classrooms and how we teach to make it engaging, right? That's the mystery word that everyone always talks about, right? Engagement, engaging instruction. So any of you guys have any ideas on that? Yeah. Sorry. So how can the work you've been doing, clearly you're passionate, you're learning a lot, you're powerful, you're making changes in your community, you're impacting other people, right? Any of this work, can it be translated to the classroom at all? And if so, how? Yeah.
Do it.
Sorry. So how can the work you've been doing, clearly you're passionate, you're learning a lot.
Okay, so I know at Gwendolyn Brooks, me attending Gwendolyn Brooks, a lot of the teachers, they tend to question us. So if I ask the question, they'll respond to my question with another question. I'd be like, okay, so are you gonna answer my question, or do I have to go and Google it? Like, so I feel like a lot of teachers, they are there to teach us, but we end up getting our knowledge from somewhere else. And I think that that's a big problem, because I'm going to school and I'm trying to get my education, but I'm being educated by Google. So that's a big problem. But I know, me being a part of Brave, I know one things that we wanted to do. We wanted to get groups like Brave inside of schools, make it a club, make it a class curriculum, so young people can be taught being a peacemaker is. So young people can know that there's other ways to solve your problems, that violence isn't always the answer. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you can teach your students, is that there's always another solution, there's always another way to solve something. So that's it.
One of the reasons I got into immigration activism was because I come from a family where I have immigrant family members, and when I got into students and things like that, I learned a lot about my family's rights and what they can do and how they can plan something out if they're ever detained. And when I learned all this new information, it amazed me that I didn't know, or my family member didn't know, or I was too scared to ask, or my dad was too scared to ask. And that's something that you can engage in class. Know your rights. Know that when ICE comes to your door, that they have to have proper documentation and signatures to get inside your house, and things like that. They're very important to stop ICE from taking advantage of Spanish speakers who can't speak English and things like that. So yeah, that's one of the things.
I want to add one thing, like basically what she said, like when ICE comes to your door and like you being able to know your rights, I would say like teach students and children like the laws, like the Bill of Rights amendments, let them know that. And when it comes to about graduating, if the students didn't know that, I would say like try to detain them, don't let them graduate, because you need to know your rights. It's important, right? I mean, like when people get pulled over by the police, whether you're black, white, Latino, whatever race you are, you should know that the police cannot search your car if they don't have a search and seizure warrant. Because who's gonna just drive around all day looking for you out of everybody? Like, what you searching my car for? I think like teach students the law, teach them how to be activists, teach them how to grow up and be someone like you, someone better than you, be a politician, fly a plane, be a doctor, brain surgeon, or whatever. Just teach them to be better than you, something. Teach them the law.
Thank you. Fabiana, did I see your hand? I think I saw Fabiana, right? Yes? Yeah.
Okay, so I feel that, a lot of the times we walk into it with this mentality that the only way I can do better is if you do worse, and that's only going to be the same until we decide the only way I can do better is if you do better. And we have to live up to that and, take action into that. And I feel that a lot of the times, I guess like adults try to tear us down, or a lot of, people who are in power, they try to tear us down because they don't want us to succeed. A lot of times people will say, you know what, like, I want you to do better, but not better than me. And, you know, I feel that you just have to kind of like teach students a lot about ignoring what people have to say about you, encouraging them to just focus on the work and not let what people have to say about you sidetrack you from all the work that you're going through. And a lot of the times I noticed, like, this happened a couple days ago. I had a classmate who didn't do his work, and the teacher got really upset, and in front of the entire classroom, she said she was going to kill him. And honestly, that was something that kind of just opened my eyes and made me see that just because you are in power doesn't mean that you are better than me. It doesn't mean that the person who is going through something is going, like, the person that, you know, the student is not going through something. Another thing that really bothered me when I was a junior, I had lost a lot of family members, and I was taking this AP Spanish literature class, and I told the teacher, you know, I'm going through a lot. I have to go to Texas for a funeral. Hey, you know what she told me? She said, get your stuff together, you know? We're almost in the AP test. That's all she said. And it really discouraged me, not just from doing my work, but it discouraged me to even participate or say things and be able to speak up because people are just going to tear you down. And I just feel like the more you teach someone that other people's opinions doesn't matter, it doesn't define you, the more that they will do.
Not even gonna stand up. So I just wanted to add one quick thing. It's a lot of teachers that fear that their students know more than them. Don't be that teacher that discourages their student because they're smarter than you.
All right, thank you so much. I want to hear from, we have one more. Oh, Jeremy? Oh, all right, yeah, this is a hot question.
Yeah, let's give some advice to
all right.
teachers.
Yes, you gotta grab that.
So one
You're
thing
welcome.
I learned in activism is the importance of building relationships. You know, personal relationships. You meet people. You need to really connect to them. I mean, in activism, especially, like, empathy is by far the most important trait you can have because we're all in this together. We're all fighting the same fight. And it applies to school also. A few days ago, I was talking to my AP Comp teacher, and one thing that she said to me that just really amazed me was, you know, I care more about you, like, the willingness for you to talk to me, like that you feel comfortable coming to talk to me, than the grade you get in my class. Like that was amazing to me, and, you know, for students to be able to come talk to your teachers and ask questions and, you know, try to learn more, because that's the point of school. That's really important. So talk to your students, form a relationship.
All right, y'all. So for my advice as far as like how to take what we do outside of school and then put that into your own classroom is to form the foundation in the classroom. Now, I know as a teacher you have a curriculum and you have like lesson plans and goals that you're supposed to meet throughout the year. As someone who's like developed curriculum for teachers and who's developed curriculum for Know Your Rights, I know it's hard to like try and get those activities in there to like make it fun. And sometimes it's not even always about making it fun, but making students open their eyes to understand what they're actually passionate about. So an example is my junior year, I took a civics class with one of my favorite teachers. Her name's Liz Robbins. Love her so much. Anybody else know Liz? Yeah, and you're the husband, aren't you? Yeah, I thought so. She told me you were here. I'm like, I'm looking at you. That's why I kept looking at, oh, I love her. But yeah, see, I love Liz so much. And this is why I love Liz, because my first day in her class, she's like, hey, this is civics, we're a community, this is peer learning, which is like, we all come to the table as equals and we're all gonna learn together as a community, and it is not assumed that one person holds more knowledge than the other, right? We're all gonna learn from each other. So that's a really good teaching strategy that I would encourage people to use is like this idea as peer and co-learning, as like we are all equals together and let's learn together as a community and lift everybody up, versus it's like I'm the sole person who knows everything and you don't know anything, so now I'm going to teach you my own views, because that's not fun and I don't like that. And what Liz did, in addition to using that skill strategy of teaching, she taught us about power and the forms of power and the channels of power and how it works. And then she's like, hey, I just taught you this. Now pick an issue that you are passionate about, tell me how power exists in this, and find a solution to it. And me being the awesome person I am, I talked about how we don't have an elected school board for CPS, and I talked about the bill. And I talked about the bill that that was going to get passed to vote for an elected school board, which ended up getting passed, but we're not going to get it till like 2023 or something like that. But it's okay, we're going to get it. And I talked about that, and it was through, and we ended up, so we talked about that, and it was a project, and it was like people talked about like the bills and like why CPS is the way it is, and people talked about like the disinvestment in our Black and brown communities, and and I was so surprised to find out that like these passions existed within the students, and they hadn't even been taught about it yet. Like these are just things that students automatically know because they experience it for themselves. And they weren't talking about like stats and reports and all this other like fancy smashy stuff. Like they were talking about their own life's experience. And I feel like it's very important when coming to a classroom to meet your students where they are, but also acknowledge that their experience and continuously validate them for that. And I feel like a lot of teachers lack on that. They don't give that validation part. They don't form those relationships. And I would honestly just encourage all of y'all to do that, because if you don't validate your students, and if you aren't continuously encouraging them and saying like, hey, I see your point here, and even like friendly challenging them to get them to think about the topic in a more complex way, that can honestly transform them and make them a more active person. Because, yeah, okay, we're gonna get an elected school board, but yay. But honestly, after taking the civics class, that's when I found out I was more invested in I was more passionate about learning why communities of color are so destabilized by our city than I was about CPS. And that's honestly been the main thing that I've focused on since my junior year. So I talked to our mayor, and I called him out on all his crap, and I've gone to his house, and he shook my hand, and then I bleached my hand because I'm like, ew, you're a filthy rat, don't touch me. So, but like, yeah, and he hates me, honestly. He really hates me, but I think that's the power of civics. It's the fact that Liz gave me that foundation to start and see where I was, and she continuously validated me, and she continuously gave me the opportunity to exercise my own opinion. And it's from there that my opinion like grew and became more stable, and it allowed me to like be here in this space, but also be in other spaces talking about civic engagement, and it led to me writing my own curriculum. So I would say peer learning, very important. Validation, it's a necessary thing, and you have to form those relationships with your students. I get it, you're in a class of 42 kids, that's hard. I know, it's hard. I don't like people, it's hard. But try, fake it, just do something, make them feel important.
Hey.
What's up? Oh.
Thank you. Good job. All right. So before we transition, there's a young person that in the room that's a middle schooler named Angel. I heard might have something to share with us. Come on up, Angel. So part of why my job is not the greatest is because I have to be the timekeeper taskmaster. So you have a minute to tell us, you get a microphone in a minute to speak your truth. You ready? Introduce yourself too, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Angel Benitez. I am from Zapata. So thanks to So Popular, I got a chance to go to film school to go and discuss things to see what we can change in the community. And I would like to be activists like them to change things in the community. and we needed to do a things to change, and I would like to change a lot of community because there's a lot of gun violence, and then there's robberies more, and I would like to do it because I like to be helping the community, and and thanks to Mr. Popular, I got a chance to do it. So thank you.
All right. So now I'm supposed to give some words of wisdom here, but I think that I'm really kind of pressed for that because I feel like we learned so much from you all tonight. So I'm going to start with just giving you a summary of what I've learned from you and how I think about that in application to the health of our classrooms and our schools and our districts and our communities, okay? Before I start, I just really want to thank you guys for sharing your stories with us today, and if we can give them a giant round of applause. There's more coming from you later. We're going to take some Q&A from everybody else. But so here's what I've heard from you all today. So the first is that your classrooms are communities, right? And so I heard that the importance to create your communities by uniting them and nurturing them and understand they're a community of people, right? That we develop and nurture, but also learn from together. That, Jamie, you said it's easy to feel like your voice doesn't matter, or sometimes having a voice can be translated as arrogance, right? Especially when young people, when you said that when you're young, you want to grow up and be an adult, right? Really, to me, that means, and I remember that feeling, it's because then you feel like you have power. You have power to make decisions, you have power to make choices, and most young people spend their entire day quite powerless. Yet we want them to be empowered and engaged in our classrooms and to own their learning, and I'm sure that you've all written those words in your mission statements at some point about teaching. And you can't really have that feeling unless you practice that, right? And so we have to do our job to find ways to build those opportunities in our classroom and to understand really what that means. Because power is infinite. If you give it, you're not losing any, right? And so we just have to think about a different way to shift that power dynamic in our classrooms to make space for you all, right? I heard a lot about making students feel invested and valued, especially when we think about schools like Hope, right? And what your community has been through. And it makes me also think about how we show our young people every day that we're investing in them, not to mention the traumas and experiences that have happened from school closures, but also the traumas that happen when we say things like, well, this school is selective or this school is IB, therefore it's a good school. And what happens to our neighborhood schools and what happens to those students. And you all are going to be teachers, and you may be thinking, I want to go to a selective enrollment school. We need to invest in all of our schools. Whether or not you're teaching in that school or you're living in a community that has schools, whether or not you have kids that are in those schools, we have to invest in them, all of us, right? So I heard that. Making advocacy and empowerment central in your classroom. If you're giving grades and you're not giving them a chance to do it again or show that they've learned something in a different way, then you're not empowering them, right? And empowerment advocacy can manifest in every single aspect of the classroom and the school. And we have to do our job of catching up to figure out how to make space for that, because clearly they already are doing it, right? I heard a lot about leveraging their expertise, right? So we saw, making your ideas and perspectives valuable because they are. Like, their lived experience is valuable and important in our decision making, in our policy, in the health of our schools, in our classroom. And we have to make sure that that is shown to be equally valuable. And you know what? That feeling, I remember before I started teaching that I felt like I had to know all the answers, and if I didn't, then I was stupid or I didn't know my job well, right? We have to own up that we don't know everything, and you're never gonna know everything, especially when you're working with students who are dealing with systemic, wicked problems. So to that end, and you might not like this with your whole question thing that you said, but educators need to start thinking differently, and this is my case for you, is we need to start thinking differently and shifting from teachers with answers to teachers with questions. We need to learn how to ask the right questions. So I'll give an example, right? So, we are really lucky to be an activist city. And cities all over the country, like LA, DC, they all look to Chicago as an example, an exemplar for activism and ownership of their communities. And so we have a lot of this in CPS, and we have to, keep working on our way to help principals, help school communities, help teachers learn how to work within that, right? So the last round of walkouts, and I brought a bunch of resources for you all today, there was a lot of crazy questions, and I was on a webinar, and there was a principal who was asking a question saying, and this maybe, I don't think it was Brooks, but, principal was asking a question about, I have these reporters who I know are gonna be outside the school when my kids walk out, and I don't know what to do. What do I do? Do I stop them? Do I tell them they can't talk to them? What do I do? And, well, of course, we said, you don't stop them, and you don't tell them what to do, you help them figure out what they want to do and what they need to do by asking them questions like, what is your message? What do you hope to achieve? How do you want to present yourself? Does your message represent your whole community, right? We have to educate ourselves in tools of organizing and activism so we understand the kinds of questions to think and look at root causes and the kind of questions to ask to help them get to a better place. Because the First Amendment is under threat for young people. It has been so for the last 15 years, slowly declining. Thank God Tinker still is holding ground, but this is a huge issue. We have a very small percentage of schools that even have journalism programs. So this is something that everyone needs to own and do a better job of learning how to participate, because this generation knows and is figuring it out. And we don't. We don't have these tools, and if we don't figure out how to make space for voice, how to make space for them to have ownership and power in the decision making, not just in our schools, in our districts, but in our classrooms. If you have classroom rules and they didn't help create them, and if you have classroom rules and there's not an amendment process, or if you have classroom rules and there's no reflection about whether or not these rules are working, then you're not living democratic values in your classroom, which means you are living in a tyranny. And we cannot prepare young people to engage in a democracy in undemocratic systems. So, you can quote me on that. So that was my whole, question thing, right? We're gonna talk later. Yeah, I love you. Okay. Also, I heard partners matter, right? Like, we have such amazing partners in Chicago. Seek them out, learn how to use them and leverage them, and partners, if you're in the room, help teachers to grow so that the work that you're doing is sustainable and lives in the school and doesn't leave if you happen to have to leave, right? We have to put schools and student development first. Take you seriously. Absolutely, and this goes back to the, what I was saying before about you needing to have a voice, right? And I don't mean like you get to choose which book we read next. That's not student voice. Or that, you're right. That's a really good, you're right, that is, all right, I'm sorry, I feel you're right. That is voice, but I think more so like really seeing, like there are people, and if you've walked away with anything today, and if you're an administrator or teacher, some of the stuff that you guys were saying is hard to hear. Very hard to hear for me working for the district, very hard for me to hear not being a teacher anymore and missing it like crazy. But you learn from them because there are people who have these lived experiences that you have to bring in your classroom. And if you don't relate to those experiences, if you don't understand your layers of privilege, and if you're not checking that, learning about that every day, if you're not thinking about creating culturally relevant, sustaining curriculum, then you will never have their voice represented in your classroom. So we have a lot of work to do, right? And you guys have all hit on those things. The last thing I think I'll add, I have a lot more, but I'm gonna stop, is that your stories matter so much, right? Like we need, part of living in a democracy, and at least in a healthy democracy, is that we need to elevate stories and encourage discourse, deliberation, and dissent. We cannot have an opinion if we're not hearing everybody's voice. So if we're not making space to hear that voice, no matter how hard it is to hear it, then we're not going to be moving in the direction that we want to go. So these guys, I was really empowered by, the Parkland student activists and the Black Lives Matter activists coming together in reconciling privilege, but also reflecting and planning together. That was just crazy to me when so many adults around me were afraid to go home for Thanksgiving and talk to their families after the last election. So how can we learn about having discourse across division and reflect in how we're bringing spaces in our classrooms for deliberation, right? So I feel like I touched on all of your messages today. And so what we're gonna do now is create some space for you guys to discuss, and then we'll come back with some more questions for you all, okay? But here's my challenge to you. Make these groups as diverse as possible. So if you came here with some friends, don't go and talk with those friends. We should see difference in age, in race, in gender. This is a pretty nice mix of people we've got here. So let's try to get some diverse voices in these facilitators.